Aloha, I'm Irminne Van Dyken, MD from Out of the Doldrums. If any of you are familiar with our videos, we here at Out of the Doldrums are very much into the science behind the microbiome. Here are some videos we've done in the past discussing the basics of the microbiome and how to optimize it. Today, I want to talk about a new study that was just published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. As far as I know, it's the first study that really demonstrates a link between certain microbes in our gut that emit sulfur and colorectal cancer. It's also a really interesting study, and it leaves me with a lot of questions and room for possible improvement of my microbiome. Before we get into the science, though, let's talk about your microbiome. Recently, I took this microbiome test, which is really amazing. Amazing because did you know the first microbiome sequencing occurred in 2003? It was astronomically expensive, could only be done in specialized labs, and took a really long time to get results. Now, you can get a test for under $100 and generally get your results within a few weeks. To me, the advance in technology is mind-blowing. So back to the test. I wanted to take a moment to thank Ombre Labs for sponsoring this video. They asked me to try out their microbiome test, and I was really impressed by the ease of use and quick turnaround time. The test generates a microbiome report which is quite detailed, even to the detail of which specific bacterial species need to be increased for better microbial health. The interesting thing is they go as far as to recommend foods to eat and to avoid in order to improve your parameters. These are all research-based with links to the science behind the recommendations. So you can actually read the study that is the reason why you should be eating more of something or less of something. If you're struggling with your health, maybe you have bloating, constipation, or abdominal pain, and you can't figure out what the cause is, the answer might literally be found in your gut. Or maybe you feel like you have a weak immune system and you're constantly getting sick. Your microbiome may be to blame. Your gut microbiome contains trillions of bacteria, both good and bad. When your body doesn't have enough good bacteria, the bad bacteria flourish. When this happens, you can start getting symptoms and health issues. Ombre Lab makes it really easy to measure your gut health by offering an at-home test that can measure your bacteria levels by testing your poop. The test will ship straight to your door with an easy how to collect instructions. Don't worry, it's all really sanitary. Ombre will even develop personalized probiotics to heal your gut with a subscription. So if you're struggling with your health and you want to see if your poop has the answers, visit tryombre.com/outofthedoldrums to get $30 off your first test. To get this great discount, click the link in the description below. And thanks in advance, it really helps support our channel. Back to the topic at hand, sulfur metabolizing microbes. Wow, sulfur metabolizing microbes, most often bacteria, are a special group of microbes that have the capacity to metabolize organic compounds for energy. Here are some examples: Alistopes feingoldii, Bacteroides vulgaris, Clostridialis bacterium, Ruminococcus bromii, and the list goes on. Just a side note, you can find out if you have these bacteria in your own gut, and you can find out their concentrations if you were to do a microbiome test. These bacteria metabolize the sulfur from the food that we eat into hydrogen sulfide, or H2S. Hydrogen sulfide is a gas, which is colorless, but it has a strong odor of, you guessed it, rotten eggs. Hydrogen sulfide is what we call a genotoxin, and it's been shown to cause damage to the DNA of the cells that line our colon, called epithelial cells. Higher concentrations of these bacteria translates to more hydrogen sulfide gas being produced, which is bad. These bacteria also seem to change the immune cell populations and are associated with promoting inflammation. On top of all this, scientists think that gut-derived hydrogen sulfide can fragment the mucus layer in the GI tract. This mucus layer is a barrier, and it's very important in protecting our body from the bacteria and toxins that are in our colon. When this mucus barrier gets broken down, we're vulnerable to being exposed to bacteria and toxins that could cause an environment that promotes tumor development. Because of this, researchers are starting to see a connection between hydrogen sulfide and increased colorectal cancer risk. So we've established that hydrogen sulfide gas made by certain bacteria in our colon is not so good for our overall health. It's actually likely harmful, and it could play a role in the development of inflammation, leaky gut, and even colorectal cancer. But what do we do with this information now? Fortunately, researchers have determined what a sulfur microbial diet is, and they've also identified 43 specific bad bacteria that metabolize sulfur into hydrogen sulfide. So that's kind of cool. We can link certain bacteria to making this unhealthy toxic compound. But how do we know individually if we have these toxic microbes, and how do we know if they're wreaking havoc in our colon and they're making said hydrogen sulfide gas? Luckily, Ombre Labs wants to help you with that problem. For example, you can send a stool sample to Ombre Labs and they'll generate a report of the bacteria present in your microbiome at that very moment in time. This is useful because you can try out different changes in your diet and lifestyle, repeat the test, and see if these changes translate into improving your overall microbiome health. But I digress. Back to the science. Researchers from Harvard took samples of poop from 307 healthy men, and they surveyed the microbes that were present in the poop. Sounds like an interesting job, doesn't it? They then queried the dietary habits of these men, and they were able to link certain dietary preferences with higher numbers of these sulfur metabolizing bacterial communities. They then were able to extrapolate from food frequency questionnaires of a larger population of people, and they found something very interesting. They found that certain foods triggered these populations of sulfur metabolizing bacteria to flourish. The foods were then linked to production of hydrogen sulfide gas, and the same foods were linked to development of colorectal cancer. This is huge. It's very powerful information. Basically, consuming certain foods was linked to colon cancer by way of the microbiome. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. Scientists looked at many different food types in food, and they assigned an adherence score to what they called the sulfur microbial diet pattern. They looked at intake of processed meats, bacon, and hot dogs. They looked at liquor intake, like vodka and gin. They looked at low-calorie drinks like Diet Cola. They also looked at healthier things like vegetables and legumes, as well as desserts like chocolate bars and pastries. So they called the diet the sulfur microbial diet pattern. Fancy name for a diet pattern, but adhering to this particular diet is not the healthiest thing to do. It's basically a really bad diet. So they looked at how well people adhered to this unhealthy diet, and then they looked at populations of sulfur metabolizing microbes in their poop. They found an interesting trend. They found that saturated fat as well as processed animal protein were the worst culprits when it came to encouraging sulfur metabolizing bacteria. They also found that low-calorie drinks and liquor seemed to increase those bacterial colonies. They then found that fruits, legumes like beans, vegetables, especially the cruciferous ones, decreased the population of sulfur metabolizing bacteria. And on top of that, they produced anti-inflammatory effects. If you want to know more about cruciferous vegetables, sulforaphane and moringa, I've made some videos on them and I'll link them below in the video description. So back to the Harvard study published in JAMA. The researchers followed this population of people for 26 years, and they found that the more adherence to the sulfur microbial diet they had, the higher the risk of colorectal cancer. This is a really strong trend. They also broke it down into different sites of the colon where a colon cancer could develop. They found that the greatest risk with eating this way was associated with cancer of the distal or sigmoid colon. Because of their sulfur-rich compounds, some of you still might be thinking that cruciferous vegetables are bad for your health. I'm talking about cabbage, broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts. These foods are very rich in sulfur, so it would be reasonable to suspect that they could be broken down into hydrogen sulfide gas as well. This is not the case, though. These foods are rich in sulfur-containing compounds called glucosinolates, and we know that glucosinolates have been linked to reduced colorectal cancer risk. Scientists also found in the study that cruciferous vegetables decrease the population of sulfur metabolizing bacteria. So this study confirms prior research demonstrating the anti-cancer effects of cruciferous vegetables. So maybe avoiding all sulfur-containing foods is not the best strategy. The dietary source of the sulfur seems to be more important. The animal sources of sulfur appear to be the dangerous ones, and the plant-based sources actually appear to be beneficial. This is great news because I love my cruciferous vegetables. So at the end of the day, what can we take from these studies? A sulfur microbial diet, meaning these particular foods, can cause the population of dangerous microbes in the gut to flourish and produce hydrogen sulfide gas, which is toxic, pro-inflammatory, and increases the risk of colon cancer. Lastly, our microbiomes are so unique and individual to us. So if we can test our own poop and figure out how many of these sulfur metabolizing microbes we have, we can work on making changes to decrease these populations. All right, I hope you enjoyed this super informative video. Please comment below with your questions and thoughts on the information provided today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to show us some real support and help us to grow, subscribe to our channel. Also, remember to click the link below for $30 off the Ombre microbiome test. And thanks in advance, it really helps support our channel. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and aloha.
Whoa, where are
Oh, where are we? Somewhere secret on Maui. What a magical place.